Hey, what's up, everyone? So, this is Will here, and last video on New York City, it was more of a Casey Neistat style story type video where I kind of went into a storytelling theme with music, and it was kind of like a music video where I was kind of, recording my journey and first time visiting and living in New York for the first day ever. As a tourist, and that was surreal and exciting for me. But this video is going to be different because while that one was more of a story based vlog, this video is more of a commentary. I'm going to show some footage, and more than that, I'm going to kind of expose the truth about travel and just living life. I think one of the issues with any type of social media content is that it's always just about the highlights of someone's life or the good stuff, and you can get this false message or interpretation that their lives are perfect or so great. And in this video, I kind of just want to go into detail about what I thought was not so good about this trip and just like lessons learned. Of course, I'm also going to talk about stuff I did like. I'll commentate along with the video clips you see. Right now, I woke up on my second day in New York, and I'm walking through the alleys and streets, and it's very interesting seeing all these cars and stuff on the sidewalks and these really premium stores. There's a Lego store right there, and I think for me, I'm mainly going to be covering good stuff because I want to stay positive, but I also want to kind of just, show you that it's not always super great. There's also bad stuff, and I think it's good because it makes me more relatable, but it also shows you the reality of what it's like and all the good and bad, because that's kind of what life is. And I'm sure there's people who have really great lives, and they don't have any problems. Maybe they're rich or they just lucked out. But for me, this was a budget trip, and there were highs and lows. More so just experiences and life lessons. I think the first big life lesson was controlling my temper and anger. So I thought I had gotten a good grasp at controlling my anger, and I definitely have gotten better. But there's still issues and problems with it, and it came out during this trip. So I think meditation and all the self-help books I've read and all the tips I've heard about controlling your temper, I utilized and prepped, and they helped. But one big incident that happened during this trip was I got really, really mad at one point when we got lost in the metro. So I went with my family, part of my family, my father and my sister. And my sister was just very relaxed about the whole thing, didn't really care. And she had 1% battery left on her phone, and was trying to figure out how to use the metro systems and lines to get back to our hotel. The problem was that we were way far away from it, because we had navigated and used all these metro lines to get pretty far away to go to this restaurant and visit Times Square. And we were pretty far from our hotel, and she had 1% battery life left and was still so chill about it. And so, so lackadaisical. And I got really angry about that because I'm like, you're almost run out of time. Oh, there's that Star Wars logo. That's pretty cool. There's Star Wars ads everywhere. There's even like a huge ad that was selling a Star Wars watch. But back on track, I got really, really angry, and I used some of the tips that I had learned over the years to deal with my temper. Because I had assumed I'd come such a long way from when I was a child, and I had this massive temper like most people in my family do. But this was really the first time in a while it's been tested, and I still struggle with it. I definitely did better. So what happened was I started really meditating, like right there actively. I made my breath very noticeable and loud. I just couldn't help it because I was so angry. And I just breathed in and out. And I was pretty much fuming there, just breathing in and out and just focusing on the breath. I was trying to, um, you know, just calm down a bit and focus on my breath. Another tip I learned was not to try and ignore my anger or repress it or hide it or act like it's not there or reduce it. There was a scientific study done where they compared people who tried to repress the anger versus people who simply, um, you know, allowed their anger to blow through, and they found that the people who repressed it did much better in the long run. The people who repressed it, their anger got much worse in the long run. Sorry, I misspoke there. So basically, when you repress it, it doesn't actually repress the anger. It just hides it and it builds. So you end up with more anger if you try and hide it or diminish it. By the way, I made an effort to show some of the street signs I passed. I think there was one that was Lafayette Avenue in my last video. But here we are, we finally made it to our destination, which was the Museum of History, I believe. I kept tagging this museum in my Instagram as Museum of Modern Art, but that was a different one. And I'm glad we went to this one because this one has like some of like the most iconic artists, whereas the modern art one, you're going to have these weird, unrecognizable artists with weird paintings. This one, like, it covers the gambit from Egyptian art to Michelangelo and all this other stuff. And like, I could tell everyone else was just kind of walking into this museum, just like, wandering around. But the first thing I did when I went into this museum, look at how many yellow school buses there are, by the way. It's kind of crazy. The first thing I did was I asked, where's the Michelangelo exhibit? Because I wanted to go straight to the recognizable artist. And I just happened to luck out. They had recently just constructed a whole exhibit/department for Michelangelo. So I really lucked out there. Here's like the central staircase leading my way up. By the way, I just learned there's a lot of cool, interesting myths and things that I found that were kind of broken here. So cool stuff. This is how big this thing is. I'm standing and I can barely see the bottom of it. Alright, back with the commentary. Every now and then I will just splice in a video clip with the original audio with it, just so you can kind of feel in the moment with what I was thinking and how I was feeling and what I was saying while I was recording this. So I'm back with the audio here, and I just kind of want to resume quickly with my my anger situation. So that got really tough, and it took me about 30 minutes to calm down, which is a lot. This was a really cool exhibit with like all these sculptures and statues that were thousands of years old. That's the one thing I love about history and art. Like when you can like touch and feel something that was made or constructed that has so much history and like thousands of years behind it, and then you're there to experience it, and you're connected with someone who's so iconic and so amazing and impacted the world so much, and you're right in front of that sculpture and you get to like touch it and feel it. This one had no glass to protect it, which I was just like, what the heck? What if people damaged it? But I got like right up close to it. Anyhow, with my anger story, I started to vocalize it. I started to tell my family that I was angry, and I explained why. Rather than hide it like I used to, I expressed it because they weren't even aware, and that made a huge difference. It at least let it out, and that let me calm down a bit more. And then when I calmed down, I was more able to think rationally, and the first thing I made sure to ask was this reasonable? And my father immediately was like, dude, if he didn't say dude, but he was like, if the phone runs out of batteries, there's always maps like the good old days, and people around who can help us get back to our hotel. It's not the end of the world. And it took me a while to really process that. I had to calm down, but after I did, I questioned it and I was like, he's right, you know? Even if the phone dies, there's still normal stuff. There's, you know, phones have only really been in existence for 10 years, 5 years with GPS. For the decades before that, people use maps to get around it. It's not the biggest deal. So um, that's the short of it to my anger story, and that was really tough. Another thing is that my family is dysfunctional in a way, and I used to deny this. I didn't think it was true. I thought we were a normal family, but after really, reading books like No More Mr. Nice Guy and figuring out why I'm nice, and really working on myself, I realized that yeah, it's not always healthy to spend too much time with my family. I don't know what the heck they're doing. The description doesn't explain it either. Kind of like, it looks at first like this guy's trying to trip the other, but he's too casual with the tripping and they're naked. They did mention that creature is might represent darkness, the darkness of man. Okay, a bit weird, but there you go. I think I like this one best. It's golden. All right, I am back with the commentary again. So to resume what I was saying, it was dysfunctional in a way, and I had realized that, and there's many warning signs over the years with many members of my family. And long story short, I think family time is important. Obviously, Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about it, um, but I realized that for some people, you know, it's different. There's different situations. People are different. Life is more complicated sometimes. And while sometimes it's good to spend time with your family, if it's a screwed up family that you always end up fighting with or having real problems with, then, spend time away from them. So I think that's something that was tested here. And I think there was a bit of truth in that for sure. Look at those. Look at those things. And there's more over there. Look at even the horse has armor. And there's more. Look at that guy's armor. And look at this. This is a two-handed sword. I see this all the time in movies where they don't armor the horse and then the other guy comes in, like in Game of Thrones, and they cut the horse's legs off or head off or something off. It's interesting they didn't armor the legs. I guess that would have made it hard to run. And perhaps in real life you can't really cut off legs as easily as they make it seem in movies of horses. Look how big those spear things are. Look at this thing right here. Look at this one right here. Kind of like Kylo Ren in a way. All right, it's Will here, and I'm back again with the commentary. Um, Yeah, so it really got me thinking and really got me pensive this whole trip, which really only lasted about 2.5 days. But it was a very interesting trip because for another part, um, not only did I get to see all these incredible exhibits off that were dug up and restored and transported halfway across the world to this museum that were thousands of years old and had all this history behind them, and God knows how many Egyptians and other people who had constructed them. But it was also a test and experience about maturity and really seeing my family dynamic from a older age group. I don't spend a lot of time with a lot of my family because I've grown up and they've gone off to all corners of the earth for work or for um, you know school, and I don't see them very often, maybe a couple weeks every year. And I always wondered, uh, did we have a dysfunctional family, or was this something that could have been solved? And I found out it was the dysfunctional thing. There's a lot of things where, even small things, we just started arguing ridiculously, and that never happens, um, or rarely happens when I'm just with, normal people, or exercising at my CrossFit gym, or just interacting with people. So it's a lesson. That thing was in 4th century BC. I'm inches away from something that was over 2,300 years old. These jars right here. 664 BC, 525 BC. These things are 2,500 years old. This one, even older, 2,600 years old. Look at that dog one. That's
So those are the organs in the brain.
And I'm back with the commentary once again. I think this video, as it relates to you, I think how it relates and how it can be of benefit for you is to uh, not only marvel at um, all the beauty and amazingness of the world. I mean, most of the things you're seeing in on the screen are thousands of years old, but also think about your own life, about family and travel and experience and family time and mental health and dysfunctional relationships, and really figure out um, what's best for you. And you can still love your family, and it doesn't mean that they're bad people because of what's going on. But we all sometimes have um, psychological problems, not mental problems because we're retarded, but because we've been damaged or hurt, or your parents tried their best, but they still had hiccups. They didn't know the best way of parenting, and good intentions doesn't always lead to the best outcomes. And so we sometimes all have a chip on our shoulder or issues, and sometimes it's just best to you know become responsible for what's screwing you up and do your best to fix it with therapy or whatever else, and then hang around mentally health secure people who can help raise you up, um, and then stay away from those who don't. You can still love your family or others from afar. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. the brewery, bakery, granary, slaughterhouse, cattle stable. Yeah, with these wall slash brick slash hieroglyphic exhibits, it's just really cool to know that they literally transported this whole thing here and rebuilt it, um, or like took the whole thing here and tried to preserve it. And that was just ridiculous. Building it on its own is crazy. The fact that it's survived for thousands of years is crazy. And I think um, there's so much history behind this exhibit you see here. There's part of it where um, the first person who found it, some type of European adventurer, he has had an ego, so he decided to mutilate it with his initials to claim that he was the first person to find it. And then what was also amazing about this is that this whole thing used to be very colorfully painted, so it was like rainbow colors. And pretty soon you'll see a clip where I show you they give a video projection of right onto the actual sculpture of what the original colors look like, and it was just rainbow colored and so beautiful. I think that's one of the things that gets lost in movies. There's the guy who graffitied it. Um, this thing used to be rainbow colored. This is a light projection of what they think the colors of this temple look like before it eroded, based off their knowledge of painting and scientific samples. It's actually quite bright. It's pretty good compared to what it is now. iPhone. Sometimes it won't open. Yeah, so when it comes to travel and having a great experience and family time and all those different areas that we have to balance in life to live a happy, successful, fulfilled dream life, it's something that most humans strive towards, but they never achieve. But I do think that if you follow my content and if you just have some effort to look at what successful people have to say about this and rigorous science, which is stuff I talk about a lot, I think you go much farther than most people. Even to this day, all these people I see around me, they just kind of do the best that they can without consulting anyone, and they repeat history. You're doomed to repeat history if you don't learn from it. So I think, in a way, the most successful people, as seen by, coincidentally also seen by this exhibit and this museum, they build off of what humanity has already learned and taught. They don't start from scratch. And I think a lot of people, whether it's parenting or social skills or dealing with family, they start from scratch. They don't read books about history or science of psychology and parenting or relationships, which I think can really get you very far. Look at this. This exhibit was awesome. Like the amount of time they took to sculpt this thing was just ridiculous, with all those people on it. So when it comes to you, think about travel and finance and how you can create your ideal life. For me, yes, this was financially financed mostly by my family, but sometimes you have to do the hard thing, which is to say no to travel trips involving your family if it's not psychologically the most healthy. Find other ways. You can maybe you can still travel if you really like travel, but make your own money to do it. And it doesn't mean your family are horrible people. It just means that it's not the most mentally healthy. This was some like weird Papua New Guinea exhibit, and these were like these wooden sculptures that they would create as like totems, and it's just interesting how different cultures um, create different things, and it's a byproduct of the resources and knowledge that they had available. Different cultures have different climates with different um, things they used, and maybe they didn't have a lot of stone to sculpt things with. Central Park. So there are trees in New York.
Honestly, I think we should take the metro.
Yeah, I can talk about this trip for eons. And here I am in Central Park, and it was also a very eerie thing because I've seen a lot of this in movies like Enchanted and Home Alone and Home Alone 2. And you have these myths and beliefs about this from YouTube videos and all this other stuff. And just seeing it in real life, it was surreal because um, it was just normal in a way. It wasn't like it was just there. It was like these are trees, you are experiencing it. These aren't magical trees, they're just normal trees. Sure, there's like cool stuff is here, but like it's not like some mystical place. And for me, that was awesome and endearing, and um, it really made it homegrown and um, down to earth for me because it was like, sure, there's like these awesome exhibits uh, that were out of this world, like this Alice in Wonderland sculpture thing. But then I look at the trees also, and part of me is like, oh my goodness, I'm here. It's magical. It's mystical, and that was great. But then there's also a part of me that I think it it really just it really taught me the power of um, living a good life, and uh, we all being part of the same thing. Yes, New York is a magical place. Yes, maybe if you make it here, you can make it anywhere. Yes, this is the city of opportunity, but also, you know, it was still eerily familiar, and it wasn't this like super magical place where you're gonna win the lottery on the streets. The water is actually pretty clear.
Why are there groups of communities in suburbs in regions like Richmond?
Well, this usually when those Asians make money, then they move out.